Welcome to Spicy Toast Gaming and our Varus guide for Path of Champions. If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. We are putting out daily videos for Path of Champions, mostly guides and playthroughs, so if that interests you, please subscribe. Alright, let's get into the video. Starting off with a overview, just giving you some of the general information about this champion and what makes them a bit more unique, so you know if this is someone you potentially want to play and invest your time and shards into. So first off, we have variety. Now, because of the way he is built and his star powers, he can work in a wide variety of different situations, and really every game ends up feeling very different when you're playing on Varus, which is very nice. For a lot of the other champions, often you'll find your games end up playing out in very similar ways. With Varus, every adventure usually feels very different than the previous ones. Obviously, you're still focused on spells, but still plays out very different. Next, we have support. So with the way his kit is set up, he makes a very good support champion. So the champions you get with your first reward really can change up the way you play and adds into that variety of games feeling very different, because you can have your main champion actually fill that more supportive role. So if you like that kind of game style, then Varus could be the champion for you. Next is that spells focused. So there's a lot of different spells focused champions in Path of Champions. The way Varus works is his spells are primarily focused on single target spells that target your units. So you're working on buffing up your units, spreading those buffs around, and using that to overwhelm and destroy the enemy. Next we have Champion Draw. Now, the way Varus works, much like Kayn, once you play 3 cultist spells, which start off in your deck, you automatically draw Varus. Now, there is some big issues with this that we'll go into later, but it can work to help you draw your Varus as long as you don't have bad luck. Next is the anti-synergy. So he has 2 spells that start off in his deck. One of them is a 4-cost spell that can only be used by equipped allies. Now, the only ally you have in your entire deck that has an equipment is Varus himself. So essentially, you need to play the spell in order to draw the champion, but you can't play the spell unless you have the champion already. So if you're getting bad luck and you keep getting that spell, you're not able to draw your Varus. So there are situations where you just keep getting this spell in your hand, you can never use it, and so you can never draw your Varus, and so you can have very bad luck. Now, there's another spell that can be used by anyone, and it's very cheap, and so as long as you get that, you'll be able to get your Varus very easily. But there is a large anti-synergy problem built into this deck that you will experience when you are playing it. Alright, so next is the versatile nature of the deck. Now, since it's so spells focused, what spells you use can really change up your playstyle and really help you be able to encounter and take care of a lot of different situations. So it kind of plays into that variety of your games feeling different, but it just helps you also to be able to answer whatever the opponent is throwing at you, that you can either buff up your unit, give it spell shield or barrier, whatever spells you pick up along the way, and be able to play those regularly. So it is a very versatile champion. He also is able to generate really good keywords for himself. Like Varus starts off with quick attack. When he levels up, he gets overwhelm, and then also he can get vulnerable on enemies very easily. So he can handle a lot of situations. So it is a very versatile deck. So this was just a brief overview of the champion. If there's some of the things you don't understand right now, that's fine. We're going to go in to the actual game, explain more of how he works, why he's so spells focused, what causes that, and more dive deep into that anti-synergy. This was just a brief overview, but now let's go into game and dive deep into these topics. In game now with Varus, we do have him up to level 20, 2-starred currently. So Varus is 4 mana and 3/4, so a pretty good stat line. He also starts with Quick Attack, and he has his origin, the Arrow of Retribution. So this part is for deck building, which doesn't really matter for Path of Champions. The important part is right down here. When you've played 3 or more cultist spells, you draw a Varus. So that is very nice. When he levels up, he gets Overwhelm, and he auto-equips the Darken Bow. So baseline, what the Darken Bow does is when you play a spell or equip an ally, he gets +1 attack, up to a maximum of 5. And that lasts until he strikes someone, and then he goes back down to whatever his base attack was. Now when he levels up, the Darken Bow levels up, and now it can go up to 10 attack, and it activates twice. So if you play a spell, now he'll get 2 attack. And so that can scale him up very quickly, but again, it only lasts until he strikes, and then it reduces again. His spell is Chain of Corruption. Give an enemy vulnerable, and give an ally +1 this round, and then it creates a fleeting one in hand, so you can keep using it over and over again, as long as you have the mana. Now, he is very good at closing out games. You can level him up very quickly, and then with that Overwhelm Quick Attack, you can get him very large, hit the enemy, go through their defenses, and win games. And because he can also do Vulnerable, normally you don't really feel like you need to get Overwhelm for your units, or Quick Attack, or Challenger. These are things that he normally is able to cover, so you can work on getting different upgrades. So that's his card. Let's look at his star powers. So the first one is Blighted Blessing. The first time each round you target an ally with a single target spell, copy it onto your strongest ally. So this has to be a single target spell. So only one that affects one target, not one that affects your target and the enemy, or multiple. So that's really why you're focused on those single target spells instead of other spells. Now his rank 2, Gift of Corruption, you get that +1 starting mana, and now round start, reduce the cost of a spell in your deck by 1, then create an exact fleeting copy of it in hand. So this is really nice, and if you want to go towards other spells other than single target, this will still work for them. You just won't get that Blighted Blessing additional effect. Now the rank 3 is actually very strong. So normally rank 3s for champions is just a doubling of the rank 1. But here you see when you play, or when you target an ally with a single target spell, copy it on your strongest ally. So it no longer has that limitation of the first time each round. Now it's just every single time. So you can just play, anytime you play a spell, that single target on an ally, it's going to buff your strongest one. So it's not just a doubling, now it's just as many times as you want, which will be very strong. So this, in general, is pretty good. You're creating a spell in hand every single round, and then it's also just reducing the cost of the spells in your deck, so very good star powers for that spells-focused playstyle. Now let's take a look at the starting deck and where the problem comes in. So the 2 spells that you start off with your deck is Furious Wielder, so it's a 4 cost, an equipped ally strikes an enemy. And then you have Momentous Choice. Give an ally +1 attack or +1 health, and then if you've equipped an ally this game, play a copy of me on the same targets. So these are the only 2 spells you start with, and as you can see, they are both cultist spells. So once you play 3 of these, you will summon a Varus. So if you get the Momentous Choice to be the spell that gets generated, then that's amazing, and you'll be able to draw Varus very quickly. Because when you play this with the rank 2 star powers, it automatically does it twice, and then if you have the Varus equipped, then it makes 4 of them. But the issue that you only have 1 person with equipment means that you're really not going to be able to use this spell until you already have Varus. So you're not going to get that effect of drawing Varus. So there are some ways you can try to kind of band-aid fix this issue, and we'll go into that with trying to either get other support, your support champion have equipment, or trying to get powers that generate equipment on game start, so you can try to just cover that weakness. But this is definitely an issue, and when you play this deck, you are going to have rounds that every single round, this spell is generated and you can never use it. And then you never draw Varus, and you just feels awful. So that is one major problem in this deck, but in general the deck is pretty good. You have a lot of these cards that are summoning gems, and gems single target spell that you'll be able to copy onto your allies. All of these doing when you equip an ally, get another gem, strike, create a gem. So these are very good. One thing I'll say is Noxian Defector. Didn't really like this card with Kayn, but with Varus I think it is very good. With Varus, when he levels up his attack because of the Darkened Bow, it will snapshot with a Noxian Defector. So even after Varus attacks and loses all of that bonus attack power, the Noxian Defector will still have that for his attack, which can be very, very strong. Also, this card here, very nice to be able to give someone or grant them Spell Shield or Overwhelm. That's why I normally don't run Spell Shield on Varus, since this is 3 cost. It's fairly cheap, and if you feel like you need that to either punch through the enemy defenses with Overwhelm or protect one of your cards, especially Varus, this is very nice. This deck in general is able to generate consistently different keywords or effects like vulnerable. So you really don't need to try to get those in your relics or powers in game generally. Out of the cards I would cut, I would normally cut Freed Colossus. It usually is just too expensive to really make it worth it. It does have that Overwhelm by default, so that can be good, and if it is getting late in the game, you want a bigger drop, it works for that. Generally though, if I'm going to cut something from the starter deck, this will be the one that I cut. Alright, taking a look at his relics, I normally go with the spells focused. So he is level 4, so you are going to take a bit of time before you get the Archangel Staff generating. But with this, you play him on 4, he refills his spell mana, and then every round after that, you get the Archangels going off, just so that you can play whatever spells you have. Now, you can go for that more supportive playstyle, like I mentioned, where since you are normally able to consistently draw Varus, even with having less copies of him in deck, you can focus on getting more copies of your support champion. And you'd get Star Gem just to make it so your allied champions are even stronger. Or if you want more of that crazy variety playstyle, you could also throw in Guardian's Trinket, which adds 2 random champions to your deck and gives them both a random epic item. So if you really want to have crazy fun games where you don't know what's going to really happen, playing Guardian's Trinket and Star Gem can be fun. Now that's obviously not going to be as consistent because it's going to be a bit more random, but that can be a fun playstyle for you to lean towards. He already has quick attacks, you normally don't need that with some of the more common ones. There is Spell Shield if you really want to protect your unit. Normally it's not really necessary because you have that card that can give it to you anyways. Rage Blade, he doesn't really attack enough. Normally you're only getting a couple attacks off, and they're big attacks with that Overwhelm, but it's not enough to really make this worth it. Chameleon Necklace, another one you don't really need generally, since you normally are able to draw him. So yeah, most of these you aren't really needing. If you had any of the ones to just give you that stat increases if you wanted, you definitely go with that. But normally I find just having the mana refills to help your spells be better is pretty good. Normally you don't want to go with loot-ins, even though it is a spells build. Most of your spells are helping your units, not actually attacking the enemy. So that wouldn't really benefit you much. Alright, this has just been a brief overview of the champion in-game and kind of their deck and how it works. There's definitely many different ways you can build him, and this is more of a general overview. I'm not trying to go into every single detail. But now we'll go look at some of the powers in-game you might want to shoot for, as well as kind of the spells you might want to pick up if you see them in the shop. Varus is a spells deck, and so you want to be picking up multiple different spells throughout the course of a match. Normally you're wanting to get those single target spells so you can benefit from his star power to copy them. And so I just wanted to highlight some spells that you might want to get, or just the mentality you might want to be looking for. So with some of these, like Spirit's Refuge, very good, giving an ally barrier and lifesteal around, lets you protect your units as well as gives you great sustain. This is a spell you normally want to be copying on multiple targets, because with his star power, when you play it on an ally, it copies onto the strongest ally. Now you can use that to spread out buffs to multiple units, but if you play a spell on your strongest ally, that way it'll get just applied twice. So with some of these, like Primal Strength over here on the right, you might want to put that on a single ally with Overwhelm, and let them just punch through the enemy defenses and destroy the Nexus. Now you might want to spread it out to give your unit some more survivability, but there's just some things you can think about using the spells you find in-game, giving two allies elusive, so they can just slip past all the enemies, potentially destroy the Nexus. Very good, and the fact that you'll be generating these as long as they're in your deck at a reduced cost is so nice. So there's obviously tons of other amazing spells. Just wanted to highlight a few, or ones that I thought were fun in game, and kind of give you some thought behind what spells you might want to be looking for and picking up. Definitely let me know in the comments down below what crazy spells and combinations you've gotten in your Varus games, because I think this is going to be one thing that makes his decks just feel very different and give you that variety of every game, going in the shop, opening your spells chest, seeing what you get, seeing if it's something that's just going to completely break the game for you. And it's really one of the best aspects of Varus, in my opinion. Alright, we'll move on, take a look at some of the powers you might want to get while you're in-game with Varus. Starting off with the powers you're looking for in-game, if you've watched any of my other guides, you've likely seen this before. Tend to use it a lot, but it just works for so many champions. So you have the Wild Inspiration, your created cards cost 1 less, and Spellslinger, your spells cost 1 less. These both fit the same function for Varus. Every round you're making a spell, and that's a created card, so just reducing that further by 1 is really good. Lets you definitely be able to play your spells more liberally. But Spellslinger, all of your spells cost 1 less. For Varus, this is a bit better. This isn't always the case. Like I'm working on a Tom Kench guide right now, and for him, Wild Inspiration is actually better, because that doesn't just focus on spells, it's any created card. But Spellslinger, the fact that it's just spells, in this deck, all you're generating is spells. Now, this is actually good not just for your star power that generates spells. Most of your cards are generating those gems, so getting those reduced as well, but that will count for either one of these, but both very good, ones you want to get in-game if possible. Next we have Sorcery. Round start, refill your spell mana. So again, very similar to the last spells we looked at. The entire deck is built around casting spells very often, so just being able to do that and not have to use your normal mana for that, just being able to use your spell mana is very nice. So that's definitely a nice one to have on Varus. Now this next one, Share the Bounty. Unfortunately, I was not able to get this on my Varus playthroughs, so I was able to get this from on a different champion, so I wasn't able to test this in game, but essentially the way it's supposed to work is the mirror image essentially of Varus's star power. So Varus is when you target a single target spell, you copy it on your weak or your strongest ally for Varus, This one is doing it for your weakest ally. So this would be fun to play around with to see if it works or how it works, because potentially you could have the same spell copied onto 3 different targets if you have 3 units on the board. And then I'm wondering, if you just have 1 unit on the board, is it going to do that same spell on that unit 3 times? Because that could be very, very strong. So unfortunately I wasn't able to test this one, but it seems like it would be absolutely amazing for Varus. If you've gotten this, definitely let me know in the comments down below how amazing it was, how it worked, if there was any interesting interactions that you wouldn't generally think of. But these were some of the powers that I think work really well for Varus, or one that I speculate will work very, very well. It is a spells build, and so you generally want to be getting the spell power in game. But as always, there's many different ways to build the champions, and so this is just some of the powers that work well. There's going to be plenty of other ones that do great things as well. Support champions. Now, normally this isn't something I touch on in my guides, because normally I find that support champions, you generally just go with whoever has the best items that rolled on them, and it's not going to make too much of a difference in your playstyle. But I feel like with Varus, it is more important. So we have Jax here on the right. The reason that Jax is good for this good support champion is that cheap units that improvise. So they're generating that equipment so that even if you're getting that Furious Wielder, that an equipped ally strikes an enemy, if those spells are getting generated, you now are able to play them, and then by playing them, you're able to draw your Varus. So even though this doesn't have any spells in it, it is a pretty good support champion that lets you cover up that bad RNG of just not having any equipped allies. Next over here we have is Udyr. Udyr is able to make those stance spells that let you choose how you want to buff your allies, and since those are a single target spell, they're getting copied to your other units because of the star powers. So Udyr really can scale and work very well with Varus. Udyr himself, he scales based on how many stance swaps you've made or used, and since you can be doubling the amount that you're using, can really help you out. So obviously there's plenty of other champions that would work very well with Varus. Go and test those out. I just wanted to highlight a couple that I played with that worked very well in my experience. Thank you so much for watching that video. We're putting out daily content for Path of Champions, so if that interests you, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment down below. We're just starting out here on YouTube, trying to grow the channel, so any help is greatly appreciated. Thank you, and have a great day.